All of you, welcome to this program on Google Sheets Pivot Table for Dashboards. In this video, I'm going to start with the basics and I'll be able to take 3 points in this short video. What are the prerequisites? What is the data structure that pivot table loves? How do you create a pivot table from the data tab and the 4 layouts that it presents? Row, column, values and filter. What do they mean? So let's get started. First, the data structure that a pivot table loves is that of flat file. To help you understand the concept of flat file, let me give you an example of cross tab first. A lot of times you would get a table where the 2 attributes of the data are crossing each other tab-wise. That's the reason it's called cross tab. Now one could easily look at the data and understand that Harvey scored 8, 7 and 9 in these 3 respective examinations. Written exam, technical exam, maybe final exam. Now, when you transform this data into a format of flat file, the same data would appear like this. Harvey appearing 3 times, followed by written, technical and final, and the score. Each line represents one complete transaction. Now in Microsoft Excel, you could convert this into this format using a feature called unpivot column. However, in Google Sheets, you'll have to use a combination formula which I will explain later in this program. So this program is not just basics of Google Sheets pivot table, but there are a lot of tips and tricks which I'm going to share with you. At the moment, my point was just to make sure that I'm able to help you understand the difference between cross tab and flat file. Flat file is what pivot table loves to have. Next, let me start with a raw data. It consists of 5,000 rows of sales transactions. What this company does is sell sports equipment, more specifically in the category of bikes, clothing, components and accessories. When you take some time and look at the data, you will realize that this company is selling it to customers across the globe. I can see the countries of US, UK, Canada, Germany, France and so on. And each customer could belong to a certain tier, let's say gold category, silver category or maybe platinum category. So each line represents one order, one transaction, and this is the data we'll be using to create the pivot table and understand the basics. First, I choose the entire data using a shortcut key. Now, just a quick tip here. If you press Ctrl and / in the Google Sheet, you will get this keyboard shortcut. So let me write this down for you in case you are confused. Ctrl and /. That will fetch you this panel of keyboard shortcuts. Next, you can enable the compatible spreadsheet shortcuts feature, which means if you're aware of Microsoft Excel shortcut keys, you can use most of them by simply switching this button on. Now, having selected the data right from the beginning, I will now go to Data tab, click on Pivot Table option. Now, once having done that, I'll be careful whether to have this pivot table inserted to an existing sheet or a new sheet. So I'll keep that new sheet. And in case you think that in future more rows of the data might get added, you might want to remove the row references and just keep the column references such that any new data row that gets added will automatically be updated in your pivot table. I will be clicking on Create. Now, once I have this pivot table in a new sheet, let's understand the various components of the pivot table layout. Now, pivot table has been generous enough to give some hints. For example, this section is what is referred as rows. Similarly, the headers are referred as columns. All the numeric data that exists here would be referred as values, and later we'll see how can we filter the entire pivot table using this additional option called filters. At the moment, let me show you what happens if I go to the rows section, click on add and choose region. Let me do that once again. Add and I choose region. You can see the list of all the regions which are by default arranged in an ascending order. that is A to Z. Next, I go to column and I click on add and I choose the customer tier. See, on the header, I get to see gold, platinum and silver. Now, the structure is in place, but I do not get to see the numbers. The reason for that is because I have not chosen any column header under the values attribute. So I click on add and I'm going to choose gross sales amount. Wow, I get to see all the numbers, and this is like a pretty neat pivot table report which shows you all 3 years sales data. Now, if you wanted to look at this data from only a single category of business, I could have gone to filters, add, choose category, and once the category is chosen, I can click on the filter and decide to see, hey, can I choose just bikes? By clearing out all the items and just choosing bikes and clicking on OK. So the numbers that you see right now are all bikes. Now this is the basics of pivot table. We'll get to understand more features as we move along in the entire journey. For example, how to sort the data, what are these drop-down options for, and so on. So I strongly suggest that please pause the video and do practice this till here so that you can get comfortable when we start talking about the other features of the pivot table. The series will not only have the basics but also really advanced features which I'll discuss towards the end of the video series.